Chapter 3, The Rights of Englishmen. Part of the empire. If the colonists had bumper stickers, one of them surely would have said, "Proud to be British." That's how most colonists felt in the middle of the 1700s. They were members of what became the greatest empire in the world, the British Empire. They even modeled their own governing bodies on the British system. How did a small island nation create the British Empire? Beginning in the 1500s, what was then the English crown gave permission for people to set up colonies in North America. Over time, England's colonies in North America grew. In 1707, England, Wales, and Scotland united under the name of Great Britain. Great Britain later set up colonies in places like Africa and India. Within a few hundred years, Great Britain became a powerful nation with colonies all over the world. In other words, it created an empire. The picture on page 19 says the colonists were inspired by the parliamentary system. The English Parliament has two houses, the House of Lords and the House of Commons. This is a House of Commons, meeting during the 18th century. As members of the British Empire, the colonists had special trade agreements with other parts of the empire. On the oceans, their ships were protected by the British Navy, the greatest navy in the world. Most important, the colonists in North America enjoyed a great deal of self-government, which is the ability for people to make rules and make their own laws. So even though they're on their own new land, they're being protected by the British Parliament or the British government when they're in the water. But I'm wondering, would the British government protect them if they were to get in a war? So they're kind of on their own. They're getting a little help from other people, but they don't have laws in place. So it's kind of like they're starting out their own new country, and maybe they have to make laws for themselves. That is, it says the colonists had a say in choosing their own laws. How did that happen? Self-government started in England several hundred years earlier. At that time, certain wealthy and important English landowners elected people to represent them in the English Parliament. Parliament is a law-making body, much like our Congress. At first, Parliament had little power. The king had most of it. Over time, members of Parliament insisted that only they, not the king, should make the decisions about taxes and spending. They said that Parliament should have a say in other decisions too. English kings disagreed. For a few hundred years, the kings and Parliament struggled over this issue. In 1689, Parliament finally won. I'm on page 21. When the English first settled in North America, they brought this idea with them of self-government. Pretty soon, colonists were electing representatives to their own lawmaking bodies. These bodies were usually called assemblies, but not everyone in the colonies could vote. Women, African Americans, and Native Americans could not vote. Only white men who owned enough property could vote. This meant that a large part of the colonial population could not vote. So it seemed like voting was only available for people who had enough property. When people who have enough property usually are the wealthier people. And it's saying most of the people couldn't vote. So I'm saying most people in the colonial times weren't super wealthy. Soon, colonists insisted that their only elected assemblies could make laws for their colonies. They knew it was Parliament's job. The picture on page 21 said colonists wanted their own elected assemblies. To run the British Empire, it was up to Parliament to pass laws about trade among different parts of the empire. Only Parliament could decide the rules for trade between the empire and other parts of the world. The American colonists didn't argue with that. When it came to everyday life in their own colonies, however, the colonists began to think that only they knew what was best for them. That part seems important. It says when it came to everyday life in their own colonies, however, the colonists began to think that only they knew what was best for them. So it seems like they're hearing things from other places in the world. The King of England, their own parliament there is telling them what to do, creating laws, just like we have here. But most of the people over there who started this new life on this new land before there was actual government felt like they knew what was best. So I'm thinking that this might start to be a problem for them. All right, I'm on page 22. It says, subheading, Claiming British Rights. So I want to think about what that may mean, okay? Again, they're on this new land in North America, and across the ocean are the British, who are still protecting them in their waters. But they're talking about claiming their rights. So maybe they had some rights in Great Britain that they wanted to bring over here, but I'm confused because I remember they came here, they wanted to start a new life. So let's see what this is about. Claiming British rights. As you have discovered, England had joined with Scotland and Wales to form the nation of Great Britain. The people of Great Britain, the English, the Scots, and the Welsh, had self-government. They also had their other rights and liberties. As members of the British Empire, colonists in North America felt that they should have the same rights. Most of these rights and liberties were meant to protect the people against unfair actions by their own government. For example, the government could not just take away a person's house or land or ship or other property. If the government said it needed property for a very important purpose, it had to prove that to a judge. If the judge agreed with the government had to pay the owner for whatever it was taking. So it seems like before this was happening, government used to be able to take people's land without permission. Now, the first law that's in place is that people and their things they own are protected. So it seems like they do start to have their own laws and rules here, even though they started in a new country or a new land. Bottom of page 22. Similarly, government officers could not search your home or business whenever they felt like it. They first had to explain to a judge why they believed you were hiding something illegal. The judge then had to give them permission for officers to conduct a search. Otherwise, no search was allowed. So that's probably one of the second laws that they enacted, that nobody could look for your things without permission. So laws are starting to be put in place back then, before they even have their own government. According to the law, British citizens could not be put in jail unless they were accused of breaking a law. If they were accused, they could not be kept in jail indefinitely. They had to have the right to a trial before a jury of fellow citizens. So I want to pause here and point out, they do have their own system kind of over here that's working in place, but it's all very new and they're still figuring out how it works. There were other rights too. If citizens wanted to gather peacefully to talk about a problem or to protest something, the government could not stop them. If they wanted to petition their government, they had that right too. To petition the government is to ask the government to change a law or to do something or to even stop doing something. Do these rights seem very special to you? Maybe not. We have them in the United States today, and sometimes we take them for granted. Even today, many people in the world do not enjoy these rights. In the middle of the 1700s, very few people outside the British Empire did. The people of Great Britain were proud to have the rights of Englishmen. So were the colonists. So this part's telling me that at this time in the 1700s, very few people in the world, other than the British Empire, the people in Great Britain across the Atlantic Ocean, and the colonists who came over from there, had the rights of these Englishmen. The right that nobody could search your house, the right that you could petition the government to change the law, the right that you could be held on trial, you couldn't be kept in jail forever, the right to be protected from illegal searches, and then the rights to protect your own land and property. So 1700s, over 300 years ago, only a couple people in the world, or many places, not many of them had these rights. All right. And at the bottom of page 23. No wonder the colonists felt that they were among the most fortunate people on earth. They lived in a land blessed by nature. They enjoyed the rights and liberties equal to anyone, anywhere in the world. They were proud and happy to be a part of the Empire of Great Britain. The idea of separating from the British Empire probably never entered the minds of most colonists. So the idea that even though they came over from another country and started on a new land, they never thought of themselves as being separate. That might be important to think about later. Many years later, Benjamin Franklin said, "I never heard in any conversation from any person the least desire for separation from England, meaning nobody wanted to leave England. Franklin was remembering how the colonists felt around 1763. But 13 years later, the American colonies separated from Britain and declared their independence. What happened to the colonists to make them change their minds? So a few important things to note. Remember, all these people were coming over here in search of a better life. But now they're telling me that life in England particularly wasn't that bad. So the colonists coming over from England maybe didn't have it as bad as the people in Ireland or the people came over from Sweden. This makes me think that England was a little bit different from the rest of the countries in the world at the time. Also, they're saying that these colonists, these new people on the new land, had rights, and no one else in the world did. But I'm confused now because the other people who weren't the colonists, the other people they brought over from Africa who were slaves, didn't have these rights. So it doesn't necessarily seem fair what's happening over here in the colonies for the people living there, and then also the other countries who are trying to control them. Because it says 13 years later, they declared their independence. So they were happy at first, but then something changed their minds. So I want to think about what made the colonists unhappy as we continue to read. Tomorrow we'll start reading chapter 4.